if you're seeing a bully in the church, they're probably doing it to other people, whether you know that or not. So when the church has a zero tolerance bullying policy, and that may not be what they call it, that's just what I'm calling it. Something that says, hey, we don't tolerate bullying in our church, no matter what your title is, no matter what you're representing, no matter what. We don't tolerate bullying here. Welcome to the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast with your host, Soneakqua J, where we'll walk through the question, what in the church happened to you? I am a licensed professional counselor in the states of Texas and Ohio, where I work with people dealing with anxiety, depression, and religious trauma, also known as church hurt. But this is not therapy. This is a podcast highlighting social and emotional learning skills and strategies that will help you manage your thoughts, feelings, emotions, decisions, and relationships as it pertains to everyday life, but specifically for the church. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Grab your water and your journal and let's jump in. Welcome back to the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast, where we ask the question, what in the church happened to you? And then we walk through social and emotional learning skills and strategies to help you manage your thoughts, feelings, emotions, decisions, and relationships in everyday life and specifically in the church. I am your host, Soneakqua J, and again, welcome back to our podcast. We are continuing in our series. This will probably be the last part of our series on self-esteem and Christ esteem, but this episode is slightly different in that we're going to be talking about bullies. Are there bullies in the church? Well, of course there are bullies in the church. How do I know that? Because there are bullies in everyday life. So people don't just, as soon as they walk into the church, they become different people. And I think sometimes as churchgoers, sometimes even as believers, as followers of Christ, we expect that when people enter the church, they're a certain way. And then those of us who are believers, who are on the side where we are deep in our faith and we are walking with Christ, and then we see people coming into the church, I think we believe that because the people are hurting, they're automatically going to fall in line and do everything that we believe that they're supposed to do. But we also have to look at people from the other side. There really is not a bridge from the world into the church. So when people come in, they come in hurting and they come in expecting. They come in hurting and looking for relief for their pain and their struggle. They come in hurting and they come in with all the things that they had in the world. Those things don't just get dropped off at the door. So when we talk about bullying in the church, people don't tend to think that there are bullies in the church, but I need to tell you that there are. Because there are bullies in the world, there are bullies in the church, because you can just walk right in. And what I want to talk to you guys about today is how to recognize a bully in the church. And I really want to encourage leaders in ministry. You may think this sounds weird, but I'm honest about it. Having some sort of zero tolerance bullying policy, just like they do or they should in the school system, having some sort of zero tolerance bullying policy in your church as a protocol, as a standard operating procedure. Because what I'm realizing myself as a therapist and working with other Christians and working with other people who are wanting to be in the church, our people are running into bullies and different struggles that they're finding in the church that they didn't realize that they would find there. They thought that they would get a relief. And to be honest, they should get a relief when we come into the church, but it won't happen automatically. There are things that we need to do as the body of Christ to ensure that we do a better job of receiving people into the church and making the church a safe place for them to be. we are looking forward to revival, right? As believers. So we have to make sure that when revival happens, when the people are coming into the church, that the church is a safe place for all of us, including the people who have no idea what really the church is all about. So when I talk about bullying, I want to talk about three different types of bullies, and there are more. These are just people or characters or personalities or characteristics that I've identified myself being in the church and working with people in therapy who are trying to work through things within the church so that they can remain in the church, or like because of this podcast, this is a church hurt recovery podcast. People have been hurt in the church by bullies. They have left the church, they have walked away, and this is just a part of what I want to do and what I want to see happen in the church to maybe bring some folks back in and to remind them and to make sure that the church really is a safe place for us to be. So when I see bullies, there are three distinct types of bullies that I've seen throughout my career of doing therapy and more recently at working with clients and just being in the church in general. The first one I will call the title tyrant. What does that mean? The title tyrant is someone who has a title like minister, reverend, pastor, prophet, apostle, bishop, whatever their title is. They take their title a little too seriously, and because they haven't healed from the things that they experience in the world, they are using their title to give them carte blanche in the church, like feeling like that they can do anything they want because they wear a title. Okay, so those are what I call title tyrants. What is the next one? I would call them an attention seeker. And this is someone who may be doing all sorts of things to get attention because they don't have this in their real lives, in the real world, or maybe they do and believe that they should have this type of attention, this type of reverence, maybe throughout their lives and even in the church. So they take their bad behavior, because attention seeking is actually bad behavior, but there's a reason behind it. We don't necessarily know that all the attention seeking bullies in the church are doing it for the same reason, but they are doing some of the same behavior that you would see an attention seeker doing in the world, doing all sorts of things within the church to get attention of leadership, maybe to, weirdly enough or oddly enough, to make friends and get people to notice them. So this is somebody that might be bullying you in the sense that they want you to be their friend. They want you to pay attention to them. They want you to think that they are something maybe that they're not. And then the last one that I'm going to talk about in this podcast is the puppet. The puppet probably is the scariest one, but it may also be the one that you can recognize a lot easier than maybe the other. The puppet is someone who is not surrendered to Christ in probably any area of their life, but they do know the Bible. They do know Christianese. They know all the words and the phrases and the things that we say within the church. But I have to remind you about the puppet. The puppet is actually being used by our adversary, by the enemy, by the devil, by Satan, Lucifer, whatever name you want to call him. The puppet is actually a puppet of the enemy being used inside the church to mess with God's people. And so I want you to understand that, first of all, not all churches were built by God. It is super easy to go online and to get yourself a minister's license. And then it is super easy to build a nonprofit and call it a church. And so we're going to talk about these things a lot later, but this is where and how cult activity can happen, because it's not hard to get yourself a minister's license and it's not hard to create a church. And so anybody can do it. So not everybody that's in the church actually is of God. So I want people to start remembering that, especially as we talk about church hurt and recovery, that you may have been hurt or wounded by somebody that God did not send, even though you're under the impression that because they were in a church, that God sent them there. It may be that this was a puppet, somebody being used by Satan and just infiltrating the church. So those are the three types of bullies that I really want you to start to understand. And it's not that you need to go into the church and try to spot them and look for them. I just want you to understand that sometimes when there are things that are going a little awry or going wrong, especially with a specific person, it may be even a group of people, that you may be dealing with a bully or a group of bullies. You may even have found yourself in a cult. Like I said, we'll talk about that in a different episode, but I want you to be mindful and aware. So an attention seeker, a title tyrant, and a puppet. When you're looking at how is this even able to take place? How is a bully even able to operate in a church? Well, there are many reasons. And like I said previously, people take, for instance, a bully who was a bully in school. Take, for instance, the mean girls that were in school, in grade school. Well, just because people grow up, like age, I mean, doesn't mean they actually mature. So if you had a mean girl in grade school, if she didn't intentionally change her ways and realize that she was a mean girl and do some things about that, she's going to be a mean girl in her adult life as well. And so she could also be a mean girl that walked into the church, right? So you may have this type of bully. This might be an attention seeker. If she was attention seeking in school, she's still seeking attention. Okay, a title tyrant is somebody that typically loves control and loves the respect, or quote unquote, that they believe that their title brings them. And I always try to get my clients to understand that a title is just that. It's a name that somebody has either given themselves or have been given, but the person has to earn the respect. You don't have to show respect of someone who is abusing you just because they have a title. You probably need to get away from them. And it doesn't mean that you show blatant disrespect. You don't necessarily go the opposite of what they're doing. I just want you to understand that you don't have to go along with everything that someone is doing or saying simply because they have a title. Because like I just said, you can get a title online. So you have to be aware of who the person is that you're dealing with. And a person who is a title tyrant just simply believes that they should be given honor and respect and the best of the best from everybody because they have a title before or after their names. And sometimes within the church, we think that is true as well. If someone wears the title, especially if they're looking at a title that is maybe above another, like maybe that there is a bishop or there is an apostle or there is a prophet or there is a pastor above a minister or a reverend or whatever the hierarchy is, you may feel like you need to bow down, so to speak, to this person because of their title. And what I'm telling you is that there is a reverence for a title, but it also has to be that the person is worthy of walking in that title. Of course, you don't try and strip someone of their title, but you have to look at the person and say to yourself and ask God, hey, is this person right for me? Am I supposed to be under this person? Am I supposed to be submissive to this person? They have this title, but the behavior doesn't really match the title. You have the right to ask God, and you have the right to remove yourself from that title or that person as well. Okay. And so we've talked a little bit about an attention seeker. This may be a person that may or may not have a title, but definitely wants attention, wants your respect, whether they deserve it or not, has really no idea of how to earn it. But this is also a person that might be what we would call a brown nose or a smoozer, someone who is trying to get in with leadership, get close to leadership so that they have some respect. And I keep doing these air quotes because it's fake, it's phony, it's concocted, it's made up. But for them, when they feel like they have earned that place or that position, then you see these behaviors. And I've seen clients who have been in situations where there was a bully and they have made mention, maybe not, that they've said anything to someone. Maybe you haven't gotten to the right person that needs to know that this person is causing problems with you. And it's not always just one person. If you're seeing a bully in the church, they're probably doing it to other people, whether you know that or not. So when the church has a zero tolerance bullying policy, and that may not be what they call it, that's just what I'm calling it. Something that says, hey, we don't tolerate bullying in our church, no matter what your title is, no matter what you're representing, no matter what, we don't tolerate bullying here. And so there should be something in place where there's somebody, maybe a specific person, hopefully, that you are needing to report this person to. And every time, anytime you are going to report something, you want to have concrete information. You don't want this to be a kind of gray area where you feel like this or that. Come to leadership with something black and white. This is what happened. This is the day that it happened. This was said, da da da. So there should be some kind of policy of some sort or some person that you should be able to go to and that you feel safe and comfortable enough within your church to go to and talk to about this situation. Now, the puppet is someone who is probably not surrendered to Christ at all. They are doing all sorts of things that may be leading people away from Christ, maybe making people exit the church because it is just really, really rough and tough. And so if there is this type of person, there is always a matter of spiritual level that this thing needs to be attacked at. This is not always one of those situations where you can go and talk to this person and then go to the elders and then try to reason with this person. This may be someone that this takes prayer. This may take fasting. This definitely takes someone in leadership where you're not to approach maybe this type of person on your own. You will need Holy Spirit led intervention to have this sort of conflict resolution with a person that is in this situation, and really take this take this approach with all of the bullies in your church. But I want you to realize that yes, there are bullies in the church, and just because you're experiencing this in the church doesn't mean that you shouldn't say something. I know that there's often a feeling for people in the church where you feel like because it's the church and kind of we shouldn't say anything and let's just try to smooth it over. Let's try to forget about it. Let's just try to move on. This is how people get hurt. This is how people get hurt in the real world when there's generational dysfunction. Let's take that. When there is some type of abuse going on in the family, well, sometimes people do say something and the person will say, well, that happened to me too. That happens to everybody. That's just how our family is. Sometimes we can get that and take that approach in the church too. That's just how the person is. We'll just pray for them. We'll just do this and do that. And, just go on and just, ignore them and go, but it shouldn't be that way. And I'm bringing these things to your attention because it's time out for us to keep letting things just slide under the rug, slip through the cracks, for more people to get hurt over and over again when there is a way that we can stop it. We can put a stop to it. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to let people just keep getting hurt because that's just the way things have always been. It doesn't have to be that way. So if you find yourself in this situation, or if you're one of the people that someone has come to about this, go to leadership in your church, find out if there is some type of zero tolerance bullying policy, or let the leadership know that you are being bullied. Someone in their congregation is causing problems. They are wreaking havoc in the congregation. You don't know yet if anybody else is having this same experience, but you know you are. So go to leadership with a concrete um, incidents. If they don't want to hear what you're saying, that is a red flag for you. And that may be that maybe you didn't talk to the right person. I would go to another member of leadership. If you can get up to the pastor, if the pastor is approachable, that's where I would get to. If there's levels that come before that you're supposed to go through, then go through the hierarchy. But if you feel like you need to leave this church for your safety and your peace of mind, at least someone in the church now knows why you've done this. Whether they did anything to help you or not, at least they know why you've left. So if another person comes to them with this same person, with these same incidences or experiences, maybe then that they will take notice. And unfortunately, some of us have to go through the experience, the terrible or negative experience, before someone will listen. And what we're trying to do here on this podcast is keep some of those things from happening over and over again, where if something happens and you go to leadership or you follow the right protocol or whatever that is, then something does happen to rectify the situation. Okay. So what I want to talk about now is our SEL skill. Remember, all of these podcasts are about social and emotional learning, because that is how we will manage ourselves. We don't necessarily manage other people, but we manage ourselves with our own social and emotional learning skill. So when it comes to self-awareness, what I want you to think about is, are you the bully? Are you the one who has come in to the church with your own ideas, your own agenda, and you're trying to force people in the church to do it your way and be what you want them to be? Are you the bully? Find that out first. And then I want you to ask yourself, are you being bullied? And I want you to take out all the things that you would be passive about. Oh, this is the church and people are hurting, and any of the excuses that you would make for a person, and be honest with yourself. Are you being bullied? And so I want you to be self-aware enough to know whether or not you're a bully and whether or not you're being bullied in a church situation, so that you can move on to self-management. When we get to self-management, where we're talking about managing ourselves, of course. So here's where we're talking about what you're going to do. If you're the bully, are you going to seek help for yourself? If you are being bullied, are you going to seek help for yourself? And what help do you need? Do you need to seek therapy? Do you need to seek out the ministry leaders that operate in this level, where there is coaching or counseling or whatever your church offers? Or if there is nothing offered in your church, do you need to seek outside therapy or coaching or mentoring or whatever the case may be, while you are managing your thoughts, feelings, emotions, decisions, and relationships? Can you stay in this church while you go through this? Is this a church full of bullies that now that you realize it, you just need to get out? So in the self-management piece of your SEL skill, what are you going to do to help yourself manage your own emotions, feelings, thoughts, decisions, relationships? Once you move on to social awareness, now, if you haven't had the need to leave the church, think about what the social environment is like within the confounds of the church. Is this an environment of bullies? Is this an environment where you say something, you report something, you tell some leadership something, or even other congregation members, you tell them something, and all of a sudden your business is in the streets, in the church streets? If you tell them something, now it's being preached from the pulpit and basically using your whole scenario. So do you feel safe in this environment? What are you seeing socially? Is this an environment conducive to your mental health? Or are you in an environment where you're kind of afraid, or at least afraid to speak your mind or say anything or reach out for help? Are you just sitting in the church and maybe you're getting the word, but you shoot out of there after the word is over because you really feel uncomfortable in the environment? You've got to understand where you are and whether or not you're safe in your social environment as this church. Are there bullies there? Are there cliques there? Are there things that make you feel super uncomfortable? And not because the Holy Spirit is convicting you, that not that kind of uncomfortable, but uncomfortable where you don't feel safe. You don't feel safe, maybe physically, emotional, spiritually, whatever. You're not safe in that social environment. You really need to be honest with yourself. I know that this is a church, but you may be dealing with a situation where it really isn't. Now, think about, after your social awareness, think about your relationship skills. Do you have good relationships in this church, whether it be friends, family, someone in leadership, whatever relationships you want to have? What are they? Are they healthy relationships? Or now that you're looking in at this, are you realizing that you're not in a conducive relationship that will help you grow in the church and in your everyday life? Are you in relationships with people who would tell you to do things that are against the word of God? Are you in relationships with people who are trying to force you to do things that you're uncomfortable with? Because that is characteristic of bullying. So think about your own relationship skills. So do you have the skills to put some distance between you and a person who you're comfortable with in one sense and uncomfortable with in another? Are you feeling like you have to be in a relationship with this person? You have to be in a relationship with these people. You have no other choice, or you're ridiculed or outcasted or something like that. Really take a step back and observe the relationships that you're in, analyze the relationships you're in to see if you're in a safe place. Okay. And the last one is responsible decision making. Responsible decision making. What is the responsible thing that you need to do to make sure that you are not in a situation where you are going to continue to be bullied, continue to be hurt? And I'm not saying that the entire church is bad or at fault or floundering or whatever the case may be. It may just be a person or a specific group of people that, if you make the right decisions about your next steps, could put you in a place where you feel safe again, where you feel comfortable again. It may not be that you need to leave this church. This may be the right church for you. You may be around the wrong group of people. So you've got to make the right decisions, the responsible decisions for yourself, possibly for other people if your family is in this church, or if you have friends or whatever in this church. But first, think about the responsible decision that you need to make. The responsible decision is to say something, but an even bigger responsible decision is deciding who to say it to. A responsible decision is making sure nothing that's happening in your environment is going to move you away from God. That is the responsible decision. Leaving the church could be the responsible decision, but not to stay away from the body of Christ. To find the church that God would have you in is the responsible decision. So I hope that this episode has been helpful. I hope that you honestly take a look at, if you're being bullied, that you're doing the things that you need to do to protect yourself and to let someone in the church know what is going on. If you are a leader, I hope that you will take from this that there needs to be some type of anti-bullying policy in your church, so that when someone comes to you and says something that even sounds remotely like bullying, you have a protocol in place. And for those of you who have realized that you are bullying people, or those of you who are realized that you are being bullied, that you get some help right now. Do not hesitate. Whatever help that is, because this podcast does not take the place of therapy or coaching or mentoring that you might need. So I hope this episode again has been helpful for you. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so that you don't miss the next episodes. I will be back soon with more, but until then, be proactive about your mental health. Be well, and God bless. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast. I hope you've learned something, and if you did, please remember to subscribe. Also, remember that this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not take the place of therapy. So if you need professional assistance, please seek that out. Until we meet again, be proactive about your mental health, be well, and God bless.